Was ever wondering what is ISO and how clean Mini 5 Pro really at high ISO levels? Today we are going to find out with a full ISO noise showdown that compares both photo and video side by side. And I will show you what happens when you change the ISO levels. I was testing Mini 5 Pro sensor behavior in two waves. First by changing ISO while adjusting shutter to keep brightness identical, and then keeping shutter speed fixed and only changing ISO to see how noise and highlights detail change. I done both raw photo and D-Log video footage. So let's jump to the shooting process and the settings which I used for this test. But first of all, I just would like to talk about what is actually ISO. And essentially ISO is the amplification or a gain of a signal once it's get to the sensor of the camera. So the photons of the lights hitting the sensor and then that information digitally amplified and then set to the recording to your SD card. And essentially what it is doing, it's amplifying the signal from the camera sensor and then processing it and outputting it as a RAW DNG file or JPEG or MP4 file in general. So now let's figure out how those principles applies to Mini 5 Pro and what actually happens under the hood and what values are useful in production using this drone. So for the shooting process, I used ND filter 32 and I went from shutter speeds of 100 all the way to 3200, and I was changing shutter speed accordingly to maintain same exposure level every time. And the second test I done, I fixed the shutter at 1/6 of a second and then reduced the ISO levels from 800, 400, 200 and 100. So let's jump to Photoshop, and I already brought here the DNG RAW files from the shoot of the ISO levels from 100 to 3200. So now let's actually see what is the usable range and how it changes gradually. So I will just zoom in over here into the shadow area to see the noise more clearly, because this is the places where you will see most of the noise. And this is a ISO level of 100. The second one is 200, 400, 800, 1600, and then the last one is 3200. And as you can see, the grain is just gradually increase the more we're boosting the ISO levels. And that is expected. And I think for the photo mode, the maximum which we can go, I think it is 1600 ISO level, because on 3200 it's just a little bit too much of a noise, and this image is almost useless for post-production, even if you will try to denoise it later on in post. The second files which I brought here to Photoshop is same shutter speed and different ISO levels from 800, 400 and 200 in this case. And while bringing it to Photoshop, I was just exposing one stop up, the lower shutter at the lower ISO levels, just to bring it to the same exposure level, one stop. So, and as you can see, they look predictably the same in terms of the exposure, and this is what I would expect. But now let's actually take a look closer, because I was expecting to have almost same noise level, because I've seen some DSLR high-end cameras reviews online, and in those cases it was really doesn't matter which ISO settings you use, because the image was almost looking identical. But let's see how Mini 5 Pro camera center behaves in this case. All right, so I will just zoom in over here, and as you can see, this is I think most cleanest result. This is ISO 800. This is ISO 400, and they almost looking identical. The noise pattern and the colors, the contrast, sharpness, everything looking almost the same. But then this is the 200 ISO, and this is where it starts to get a little bit worse. Because if I will zoom out here, you see that we're starting to get some weird artifacts like these pink colors, and also on the vegetation there is just too much noise. And I think the reason for that, because with that ISO and the shutter speed of 1/1600 of a second, I will just bring the original exposure level just to show you how it looks unprocessed. So that's the raw file, and if I will just open it up, you can actually see that this area specifically where there is a lot of artifacts, it's almost pitch black. So it's useless for the post-processing later on in Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever you wanted to process. All right, so if I will boost it up to 3 stops, this is what we get in the image. We're starting to get those artifacts in the shadow area. In general, go with the lower ISO possible for the lighting conditions that you're shooting. And if you need to boost it up, don't go up to 3200 because that's very noisy and useless. So I think 1600 ISO is the maximum which is performing good in Mini 5 Pro. And now we will jump to DaVinci Resolve and take a look at the video footage that I shot for the same test. And at the end of this video, I will actually showcase some real world night shots of the Montreal, which I shot recently, and will show you what is the noise level with ISO 1600 and how we can also a little bit process it in DaVinci Resolve and reduce a lot of noise which is still coming from the sensor at that high ISO levels. As you can see over here, this is again the most cleanest result. This is ISO 100. This is ISO 200, 400, 800, 1600, and the last one is 3200. And it's the same as we just seen in the photo. The more ISO, the worse the image gets. And on the ISO 3200, it's becoming a little bit too compressed and noisy in general. So I wouldn't go that much in terms of the ISO levels on the Mini 5 Pro. And the next test which I done was the fixed shutter speed and different ISO levels from 800 to 100 in this case. So this is 1/1600 of a second of the shutter speed, and I gradually reduce ISO from 800 to 100. And I try to compensate the exposure in DaVinci Resolve just to bring to the same level of brightness, but actually you can see how bad it gets in the video mode. And it's not even comparable with what we've seen in the RAW DNG files, because here on top of the raw sensor data which we're getting from the DNGs, we're actually getting MPEG-4 compression on top, which is quite aggressive in the shadow areas. So definitely useless in our case. So the maximum what is useful here is this level of noise, which we can get rid later on in post. And the last thing I just want to show you is the footage which I recently shot over Night Montreal. So the settings, the shoot settings for this particular shots was ISO 1600, so no ND filters. I went for 30 FPS because 60 FPS is a little bit too much for the night shots. So in order to gain one stop for the realistic motion blur still in place, you have to lower your FPS. So I went for 30 FPS, and then for the shutter speed I went for 1/50 of a second, just to have more light in general without boosting ISO to like levels of 3200, which we saw is a little bit noisy and useless. So that's the already graded shot, but it doesn't have the denoising, and I will show you later on how to do denoising in DaVinci Resolve. Actually, it's really impressive. So that's the shot. and I just fly through this downtown area, Old Port in Montreal. And as you can see, I will actually zoom in over here just so you can see the noise level, which we get in the shadows of the sky. So that's the noise level which we have in this ISO 1300 condition, which is decent. And honestly, we could keep it as is. It's not actually hurting a lot. So there should be still some noise. But let me show you what you can actually do in DaVinci Resolve and to what level you can bring it in. So you go into your color tab and the section which you're interested in will be this section over here in the motion effects. And this is where you have temporal noise reduction and spatial noise reduction. And for the temporal noise reduction, I am usually using frames of 5, quality best, and then for the luminance, I'm not going like a lot crazy with that, so I'm trying to keep it minimal so that it was not killing the details, but something about 10 in general I think works. So you can actually see what it is doing. It just eliminates a little bit of that high frequency noise. But the most thing that actually reduces the noise is this spatial noise reduction. And this AI ultra noise reduction is a beast. And let me just show how it works. So you just switching the mode to that and then just doing analyze. So, and I think what it is finding is it is finding the level with the most of the noise. So in this particular case, it found it over here. And now if I will switch on and off, and I'm now on 200 crop, this is the difference. And this difference is really crazy. It's like day and night. It cleans most all of the noise and still retaining all the detailing, which is really great. Just one downside of using this AI ultra noise reduction, it's really, really slow. So you will need to have pretty decent video card in order to render your shots. In my case, I have 3090, and to render this 48 seconds clip, it takes almost 20 minutes to process with this AI ultra noise reduction on. But in general, it works and the footage actually becomes so clean and nice. So I'm really recommending you to use this workflow for night shots. So how far would you push your ISO levels on the Mini 5 Pro before noise becoming acceptable? Drop your number in the comments, and if you would found this useful, hit like and subscribe. More real-world drone tests coming soon. Thank you and have a good day.